Welcome to another deep dive. We're tackling Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things today.
Oh, yeah. I've heard good things.
Yeah. It's a really insightful look into building and running a tech company and
I think what's so cool about it is it's not like your typical Silicon Valley success story,
right.
Like where everything's glamorous and easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about the struggles and the really difficult decisions you have to make.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. And he's brutally honest about it too, which
Mhm.
makes it even more compelling, I think.
Definitely.
We talk a lot about company culture and leadership on this show, and Ben's book really digs deep into those topics.
Yeah. He doesn't just give you the theory. He shares his own experiences.
Right. From his time at Netscape
Right?
to building his own companies,
Mm.
like Loud Cloud and Opsware.
Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating because he doesn't shy away from the mistakes he made along the way.
Exactly. Like he's super open about the challenges he faced, even near bankruptcy,
Oh, wow.
and how he learned from those experiences.
Which is, I think, what makes it so valuable for anyone
Right.
who's trying to build something of their own.
Totally. So I think a good place to start is with Ben's own journey, because it's not your typical tech entrepreneur story.
Yeah, it's pretty unconventional.
It is.
Yeah.
He talks about growing up in Berkeley and facing this really disturbing challenge as a kid.
Yeah, the racist dare.
Right. And it's incredible how he connects this experience to his leadership philosophy later on.
It's like it really shaped his moral compass.
Right.
Like his commitment to fairness and doing the right thing.
Yeah. You can definitely see how that foundation of integrity would be crucial in the often cutthroat world of Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. It's a high-stakes environment for sure.
So let's fast forward a bit to his time at Netscape during the dot-com boom.
Okay, yeah.
Now imagine going from managing a small team of engineers
Mm-hmm.
to overseeing this massive growth, all while the industry is changing at warp speed.
I can't even imagine. It must have been insane.
It was a total pressure cooker. And Ben doesn't sugarcoat it at all in the book.
Yeah, he talks about the long hours, the
Mhm.
constant pressure to innovate.
And he talks about this one story, I think is pretty telling, about receiving an email from Mark Andreessen,
Oh, wow.
his future business partner.
Right.
And it was a scathing email.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
At the height of Netscape's success.
Yeah. I mean, Mark was on the cover of Time magazine.
Wow. That's crazy.
Right. Talk about a reality check.
That's a big one.
It is. And Ben talks about how important it is to be receptive to feedback, even when it's hard to hear.
Mm-hmm. Even when it's from, like, the poster boy of the dot-com boom.
Exactly. And I think that experience really stayed with him because it's something he emphasizes throughout the book.
It makes sense, though. It's like if you can't handle tough feedback,
Yeah,
how can you be an effective leader?
exactly. And those lessons became even more crucial when he started his own companies, Loud Cloud and Opsware.
Yeah.
Now, these ventures, they were a roller coaster.
Weren't they all back then, though?
Right. I mean, they faced near bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
They had to completely pivot their strategies,
Mhm.
but ultimately they achieved success.
Yeah. I mean, talk about perseverance, right?
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's so fascinating about Ben's story is he doesn't just tell it as like, look at me, I made it kind of thing.
Yeah.
He breaks down the decisions he made,
Mm-hmm.
the mistakes he made along the way,
Right.
challenges he faced. And he really extracts these valuable lessons that anyone can learn from.
Yeah. Like, what are some of those key takeaways when it comes to his leadership style?
Well, one thing that really stands out is his emphasis on honesty and transparency.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, easier said than done sometimes.
Right. But he truly believes in telling it like it is, even when the news is bad.
Even when it's hard, yeah.
Yeah. He uses this phrase, telling it like it is, a lot.
I like that.
Yeah. And he even jokes about having CEO Tourette's because he's so direct with his communication.
Uh-huh. Okay. I can see that.
And, there are definitely some risks associated with that kind of directness.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not everyone responds well to blunt feedback.
Right.
It can definitely create conflict if it's not done carefully.
But for Ben, it's all about building trust
Hmm.
and keeping everyone aligned on the same goals.
Yeah. It's like radical transparency almost.
Almost. But it's also about creating a culture where people feel comfortable taking risks
Yeah.
and pushing boundaries,
Mhm.
but within a framework of shared values and goals,
Yeah.
you know.
Makes sense. So how does that translate into like specific leadership lessons?
Okay, well, there are a few that I think are really important. One is his unwavering belief in taking care of people.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah. He consistently prioritizes his employees' well-being,
Mm-hmm.
even in really difficult situations. Like he talks about offering generous severance packages during layoffs
Wow.
and having these really honest conversations with people
Mm-hmm.
who are facing demotion. It's about treating people with respect,
Yeah,
even when you have to deliver tough news.
that's huge, especially in an industry that can be so, ruthless.
Right, exactly. And it's a good reminder that strong leadership isn't just about profits and market share.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building a company that people are proud to be a part of.
I love that. It's about the people.
Exactly.
Okay. So what else? What other leadership lessons does he highlight?
Well, another big one is building a strong company culture.
Yeah, that's essential.
It is. And Ben is a huge advocate for deliberate culture design.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't believe in just letting it happen by chance.
It's like you have to be intentional about it.
You do. He compares it to building a product.
Okay.
You have to constantly refine it and make sure it's aligned with your company's values.
Makes sense. So what are some examples of that? Like, how do you actually build a strong culture?
Well, he shared some interesting examples from other companies, like Andreessen Horowitz's policy of finding partners for being late to meetings with entrepreneurs.
Really?
Yeah, $10 a minute.
Wow. That adds up.
It does. And it might seem like a small detail, but it sends a powerful message.
Yeah, it shows they value the entrepreneur's time.
Exactly. And it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk, you know.
Totally. Actions speak louder than words, right?
Right. He also dives into Facebook's move fast and break things philosophy,
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
which reflects their emphasis on innovation and taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes it clear that you can't just copy another company's culture.
Yeah,
It has to be authentic to your own company and goals.
that makes sense. So how do you actually go about designing a culture that's unique and effective?
Well, he talks about the importance of identifying your core values.
Yeah, like what truly matters to your company?
Right. And not just generic statements like we value our employees,
Mm-hmm.
but specific behaviors and principles that define how you operate.
Okay.
He uses this really funny example of an EDS executive
Okay.
who preferred long layovers
Okay.
because it meant he could hang out at the airport bar
Ah, why?
because he hated his job.
Oh, no.
And it's hilarious, but it highlights the importance of understanding what truly motivates people.
Yeah, what drives them?
Right. Both your employees and your customers.
Mm-hmm. It's about going beyond the surface.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about taking care of people, building a strong culture. What else is there?
Well, another crucial aspect of leadership is mastering feedback.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is. And we've already talked about how Ben feels about directness.
Right. He's all about honesty.
He is. So it's no surprise that he's a big believer in clear and honest feedback.
Okay.
He argues that it's absolutely essential for driving performance improvement,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to be tailored to each individual.
Yeah, because what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of different personalities and communication styles
Right.
while still being clear and direct with your feedback.
Makes sense. So how do you strike that balance?
Well, he introduces this really interesting framework.
Okay.
The idea of the CEO as a 1 or a 2.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's that about?
So he defines ones as decisive, action-oriented leaders
Okay.
who are really comfortable making tough calls even when there's limited information.
Mm-hmm.
2s, on the other hand, are more collaborative and consensus-driven.
Okay, so different approaches.
Right. They excel at building relationships and getting buy-in from their teams.
Interesting. So is one type better than the other?
You know, he doesn't really say that.
Okay.
He acknowledges that both 1s and 2s have their own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, it probably depends on the situation.
Right. And the key is to recognize your own tendencies and build a team that complements your style.
That makes sense. It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Knowing when to be decisive and when to seek consensus.
I like that. And that leads us to, I think, the most impactful concept in the book, this idea of the struggle.
Yes. And it's not just about the business challenges, right?
Right.
It's the emotional and psychological battlefield that every leader faces.
Mm-hmm. The mental game.
And Ben doesn't shy away from describing the darkness and isolation that often come with it.
Yeah, he gets really personal about his own experiences.
He does. He talks about self-doubt,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
the crushing weight of responsibility.
It's like carrying the world on your shoulders, you know?
It is.
Mm.
He even compares the feeling to a young doctor being told a patient is dead,
Ah,
even though they're still walking around.
that's heavy.
It is. It's a powerful analogy.
It is. So how do you cope with that? How do you manage that pressure and isolation?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's a good place to pause for now.
Okay,
We'll dive into Ben's strategies for managing the struggle in the next part of our deep dive.
sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. We'll explore his advice on maintaining your mental health, making tough decisions under pressure, and a lot more.
Great. Can't wait.
See you there.
See ya. Okay, so where were we? Oh, yeah, the struggle. It's a really powerful concept.
It is. And Ben
Yeah.
really gets into the nitty-gritty of it, you know? He doesn't just talk about, like, the big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He describes the actual feeling of it.
Yeah, the emotional toll.
The emotional toll.
Mhm.
Exactly. Like the anxiety, the self-doubt.
Sleepless nights.
Yeah. And he used this really vivid imagery. I remember he compares the CEO to like a wartime general.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Leading troops in a battle.
Right. And he says, in wartime, a general's day consists of communication, communication, communication.
Makes sense. You're constantly having to communicate with everyone.
Right. But often about things you can't fully control.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like you're making decisions with incomplete information.
Facing all this uncertainty.
And you can't really share those fears and doubts with your team, can you?
No, you can't. You have to project confidence even when you're feeling anything but.
Right. You have to be the strong one.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden to carry. And he says something like you're always playing poker with your face as a CEO.
I love that analogy. It's so true, though. It's like you're constantly trying to read the other players,
Right.
your investors, your competitors.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to mask your own emotions.
You do. It's a constant game of strategy and deception.
Which can be exhausting.
It is, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this struggle?
Right. That's the big question. What does Ben suggest?
Well, he emphasizes a few things. One is seeking support from mentors,
Okay, people who've been there.
people who've been there, exactly, people who can offer guidance and support.
That makes sense. Having someone to talk to who understands what you're going through.
Right. And he also talks about the power of writing down your anxieties,
Oh,
getting those thoughts out of your head.
like journaling.
Kind of like journaling, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a way to process those emotions.
In some perspective.
Exactly.
Mm.
And sometimes just the act of writing it down can help you diminish their power.
Yeah, it's like you're externalizing them.
You are.
Mhm.
And he also stresses the importance of taking care of yourself.
Okay. Basic stuff, but important.
Basic, but so important. Getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising.
Mm-hmm. All the things we know we should do.
Right. But it's easy to let those things slide when you're under pressure.
It is so true, but he's not saying to just ignore the problems, right?
No, definitely not. He actually encourages CEOs to confront their fears head on.
How?
She uses this example of a CEO who was agonizing over whether to sell his company.
Okay.
He was getting all this pressure from his board and investors,
Mm-hmm.
but his gut told him to hold on.
So what did he do?
He walked away from a lucrative offer.
Wow. That's a bold move.
It was, but he believed in his vision.
Oh, yeah.
It paid off.
Wow. That's awesome.
Right. It's a great reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that go against conventional wisdom.
It takes courage to trust your gut.
It does,
Mm.
especially when everyone else is telling you to do the opposite.
Yeah. And those decisions often come with a lot of self-doubt, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
But Ben reminds us that self-doubt is not a sign of weakness.
That's normal.
It's normal. It's part of the process.
Even the best leaders experience it.
They do. And he argues that the struggle is actually where greatness comes from.
Interesting. So it's not something to be afraid of.
No. It's the crucible that forges resilience and determination.
And ultimately success, right?
Right. It's about embracing the challenge, the uncertainty.
Knowing that it's all part of the journey.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to connect this back to our listeners.
Yeah. How does this apply to their own lives?
Right, because the struggle is not just for CEOs, right?
Definitely not. We all face it in some form.
We do, whether you're leading a team
Or starting a business.
or just trying to achieve a goal
It's that feeling of being in the trenches, facing those challenges.
and feeling the pressure.
So what can our listeners take away from this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that you're not alone.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
We are. And it's okay to feel those feelings of doubt and uncertainty.
What matters is how we deal with them.
Exactly. And I think Ben's advice on seeking support, managing stress,
Confronting our fears.
yes, it's all incredibly valuable.
Okay, so what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some more specific strategies
Okay.
for managing the struggle.
Sounds good.
We'll look at Ben's advice on decision-making, building a strong team,
Mm-hmm.
and maintaining your mental health in the face of all these challenges.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
It's crazy how Ben manages to take all these like super complex ideas about leadership and company culture and make them like actually relatable.
Yeah, he has a knack for that.
It really doesn't feel like you're reading a business book. It feels more like you're like having a conversation with a mentor.
Totally. Like someone who's been in the trenches.
Exactly. And I think that's why it resonates with so many people.
Yeah. He's not afraid to get real,
No, not at all. He's super honest about his own struggles and mistakes.
which I think makes him more credible, Like he's not just preaching from some ivory tower.
Right? He's been there. He's done that. He's messed up.
Exactly. And it's refreshing, especially in an industry that often glorifies like overnight successes.
Right. Like everyone just, became a billionaire overnight.
Yeah, it's all unicorns and rainbows.
But Ben reminds us that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind those headlines.
Though so true.
So let's bring it back to this idea of the struggle,
Okay, yeah.
because it's something we've been talking about a lot throughout this deep dive.
It's such a central theme in the book.
It is. And it's that feeling of being like right in the thick of it,
Yeah, like you're facing all this pressure
making tough decisions with limited information.
and feeling like you're the only one going through it.
Exactly. But Ben reminds us that we're not alone.
Yeah, every leader experiences the struggle in some way.
They do. Whether you're running a company, leading a team, or even just pursuing a personal goal.
It's that feeling of being stretched to your limits.
So how do we actually shift our mindset?
Right, how do we not let it crush us?
Exactly. Ben gives us some really practical advice.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, he talks about the importance of building a strong support network.
Yeah, surround yourself with good people.
Exactly. People you trust, people who can offer advice and encouragement.
People who can just listen.
Exactly.
Mm.
And he also stresses the importance of managing your psychology.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Like taking care of your mental health.
Right. Finding healthy ways to cope with stress.
Whether it's exercise, meditation, spending time with loved ones.
Whatever works for you.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup.
So true. You have to take care of yourself if you want to be able to take care of others.
He also talks about the power of self-reflection, right?
He does. Taking time to analyze your decisions, learn from your mistakes.
Identify patterns in your behavior.
And he even suggests keeping a journal
Oh, interesting.
to track your thoughts and feelings.
I like that. It's a way to, like, process everything that's going on.
Yeah, and it could be super insightful to look back on those entries later.
Totally. So it's all about becoming more self-aware, right?
Right. Understanding your strengths and weaknesses.
Developing strategies for managing your emotions.
Exactly. And he also talks about having a clear vision
Yeah, like a North Star
for your company or your project.
to guide you through the tough times.
Because when you're in the thick of the struggle, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, you get caught up in the day-to-day.
So having that strong sense of purpose can really help you stay focused.
And motivated.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the hard thing about hard things.
Yeah, what are some final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is to embrace the challenge.
Don't be afraid of the struggle.
Because it's a part of the journey.
It's where growth happens.
And it's where we discover our true potential.
Seek out support, build a strong network,
Take care of yourself.
and never be afraid to ask for help.
Remember, you're not alone.
We're all in this together,
So keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep pushing forward.
even when it gets tough.
And if you haven't already, definitely check out Ben's book
Yeah, it's full of wisdom and practical advice.
that you can apply to any challenge you're facing.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.